What is going on, Bucs fans and CFP fans? Evan Wanish here, back at you with another video talking about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And today we're going to be going over the positional reviews for the wide receiver position. Now, this is a series that we have begun back in the summer before the season. We did the positional group previews, right? And I was looking at the room, who's potentially in it, what the expectations were for them. Now we're going to be taking a look at, now that we have a full season under our belt, we're going to be taking a look at what that room did. What are the expectations for them in 2025? Could there potentially be any shakeups in the offseason, et cetera, et cetera? So we've already done the quarterbacks and the running backs. Now we're on to the wide receivers. And this is obviously still a strength of the Buccaneers, right? When you have Mike Evans, when you have Chris Godwin, this is a strength of this football team and will still be as long as those guys are there, to be honest with you. But also they had some reinforcements, right? Jalen McMillan, the rookie, who, not gonna lie, maybe hit a little bit of a slump mid-season, but really came on at the end of the season there. Ended up, I believe, with 8 receiving touchdowns. So really made a pretty big impact on the Buccaneers offense, especially after Chris Godwin went down. And that's going to be obviously a big storyline just for, not for just this past season, but this off season coming up too, because Godwin is obviously scheduled to be a free agent. So yeah, a guy like Jalen McMillan though really stepped up. So let's look at overall though who is in the wide receiver room. Of course, you have Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. You have Raheem Jarrett, Cameron Johnson, Jalen McMillan, Ryan Miller, Trey Palmer, and Sterling Shepard. So Bleav Shepard is a free agent, as well as obviously Chris Godwin. Not gonna lie, I'm gonna come right out and say it. I'd be pretty surprised if Chris Godwin played anywhere else. I know that there's a lot of people that are like, well, maybe he could go to Jacksonville and reunite with Liam Cohen. I don't see it. I don't see a way that the Buccaneers are going to let Chris Godwin walk in free agency. I don't see it happening. I think the injury maybe helps their chances of retaining him. I think it might lower the price a little bit. I don't know if it's going to be a very long-term deal, maybe like a 1-year prove-it deal. Maybe it's a 2-year deal. Maybe it's a 2 years where one of the years is an option year. Who knows? But regardless, I have to imagine Chris Godwin is going to be back in the Buccaneers uniform. I wanted to get that out of the way before we really started. But obviously, again, like I said, we knew coming into the season that this was going to be a strength of this football team, their wide receiver room. And it was. Even with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin both missing time, they both went down in the same game. Mike Evans goes down with a hamstring injury. Chris Godwin goes down with that ankle injury late in the game against Baltimore on Monday night. Mike Evans ends up missing, I Bleav, 4 games. And then Chris Godwin ends up missing the rest of the season, unfortunately. And Mike Evans was still able to get his 1,000 yards. So a productive season for Mike Evans. And, that's with missing some time. So you have to imagine he's shown no signs of slowing down, folks. So I have to imagine he's going to keep up that same pace, even with a brand new offensive coordinator in 2025. So assuming Godwin's back, I don't think his role is going to change very much in this Buccaneers offense. And you have to remember, before Godwin went down, he was on pace to have like a monster, like career season, and was pretty much the Bucs' number 1 target, like on offense. And it was unfortunate when he went down. It really hurt him, and they had to adjust a little bit. I think the receivers that had to step up, like a Jalen McMillan, like a Sterling Shepard, had to adjust a little bit. Now, I did want to talk a little bit more about McMillan, obviously a 3rd-round pick from this past season. Again, started off fast, scored a touchdown in his first NFL game. Bleav it was his first NFL catch after having a solid training camp, and then it hit a little bit of a lull, right? Got a little bit quiet, and then, like I said, came on late at the end of the season there, scored touchdowns, and I Bleav the last 5 games or last 6 games, something like that. It was every week he was finding the end zone, sometimes multiple times, and it was good to see. So I do think Chris Godwin's re-signed, but I still think Jalen McMillan's a big part of this team's future. And there's no issues with having Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and Jalen McMillan as that like 3-headed monster, basically. So when you're looking at the depth of this team, obviously you're looking at Trey Palmer, Raheem Jarrett, Cam Johnson, Ryan Miller. Ryan Miller actually caught a touchdown against Kansas City earlier in the year. Sterling Shepard. Shepard's the one. I'm not sure if he's going to be back in Tampa Bay. I could see them maybe looking to upgrade at that spot there. He was fine. I mean, I think Sterling Shepard was fine, but I could see a world where they look to upgrade at that spot. So we'll have to wait and see. Looking ahead to free agency, I don't expect much there. I don't expect the Buccaneers to add much. Like I said, if anything, they'll just be re-signing Chris Godwin, which I expect them to do. Maybe they bring back Sterling Shepard, but I'm not really sure. I think the draft, though, is where you could see them potentially add a wide receiver. And I know wide receiver may not be very high on a lot of people's needs list, and admittedly, it's probably not. But if you're thinking about the future, Mike Evans currently has 1 year left on his deal. It's this year. And he has said in the past, like, he doesn't plan to play like forever. So we're closer to the end than we are to the beginning for Mike Evans, unfortunately. Because you wish a guy like that would just play forever. But I think you are getting to a spot where, yeah, a reality of the Bucs being without Mike Evans could come sooner rather than later. And I think the Buccaneers might start planning for that. So it would surprise me if the Buccaneers are going with a wide receiver in round 1. I don't expect that to happen. However, I do think that it's a real possibility that they could go with a wide receiver maybe sometime on day 2, just like they did with Jalen McMillan. If there's a guy they really like in round 2 or 3, I could see them pulling the trigger on it. I really could. If there's a guy that they envision as being like the next group of guys, the next group of guys behind after Mike Evans departs, after Chris Godwin, these guys aren't going to be here forever. So I don't think it's like number 1 on their needs list. I don't think they're going to be like heavily prioritizing it, but I do think it's going to be something they have in the back of their minds. Like, yeah, you might have to start planning for the future, right? A little bit more here. I know a lot of Bucs fans may not want to admit that or realize that, but it is the reality, unfortunately, of the situation. But I mean, regardless, like I said, Mike Evans ain't going anywhere for this year, and he ain't showing no signs of slowing down. So I don't really think we have to worry about that right now, in terms of him like hanging them up right now. But eventually that day will come. I think the Buccaneers want to be prepared for that. So, but what did you guys think of the wide receiver room in 2024? What do you think of the potential of the wide receiver room in 2025? Do you think it's going to look the same? It could look different. If the Buccaneers decide not to re-sign Chris Godwin, it could look very different. We'll have to wait and see. I would personally be pretty surprised if they don't re-sign Chris Godwin, but let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. I'm curious to hear your guys' thoughts on the wide receiver room, what they could potentially do in free agency or the draft. Let me know if you guys think Chris Godwin is going to re-sign with the Buccaneers or not. And if not, let me know why. I'm always curious to hear the reasoning behind those things. But thank you all for watching. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And go Bucs.